I am inviting everyone to kindly settle down and let us all come into silence as I read the opening verse. Once in olden times, there lived in the souls of the initiates powerfully the thought that by nature every person is ill, and education was seen as the healing process which brought to the child as it matured health for life's fulfilled humanity.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jofel and I'm from Tuburan. I really apologize for the technical glitch, but I'm very happy now that we're starting. So let me welcome everyone in behalf of our community to Dr. Michaela Glockler, our lecturer for this afternoon, to all the teachers and carriers of the Steiner Waldorf schools and initiatives in the Philippines, to all the doctors who are here, and to all friends and colleagues present here in Zoom, my pleasant and warm afternoon and morning greetings. Again, despite the earlier glitch, this lecture is such a privileged occasion for Tuburan community that we offer this to you. We are very grateful for the generous hearts that made this possible. And we are overwhelmed by the response to the invitation. And this speaks a lot about the relevance of the topic. There are many interesting questions, but primarily, all these questions center on how we can uphold healthy children, healthy human beings, healthy education, healthy freedoms, and healthy communities in this challenging point of the history of humankind. One of the objectives of this lecture is to create an opportunity for us to imagine and inspire areas of collaborative advocacy where we, through the leadership of each one and our coming and working together as a network, may strengthen our partnership with the parents, individuals, and communities for the children. And in the search of answers for all the questions, we are happy that together with us in this journey is Dr. Michaela Glockler. Dr. Michaela Glockler attended the Waldorf School in Stuttgart, Germany, and then studied German language, literature, and history. She studied medicine and trained as a pediatrician at a community hospital and at the Bochum University Pediatric Clinic. She also served as school doctor for the Rudolf Steiner School in Witten, Germany. She was a leader of the medical section at the Goetheanum, the School of Spiritual Science in Dornach, Switzerland, for almost 3 decades. For the past 25 years, she has been active as author, lecturer, and trainer, and she is currently active in the European Alliance of Initiatives for Applied Anthroposophy, or ELIAN. Friends, may we all have an insightful and engaging afternoon with Dr. Michaela Glockler. Dr. Michaela, please.
Thank you very much for this warm welcome. Dear friends all around the Philippines, I'm so happy to have the chance to be in such an important time for at least a good hour in contact with you to address a theme which becomes more and more relevant, particularly now in Corona times, where the digitalization is so pushed forwards also in schools and kindergartens. And I hope that we will come to good ideas and that after my contribution, we can have at least for a short time a dialogue. When we heard this beautiful verse again, we also got this message anew that by nature, every person is ill. These words very often are touching people. They are asking, but when we have such a beautiful newborn, or when we're watching a child, we are not ill by nature. What does this mean? We have healthy babies. And of course, as a pediatrician, I know so many healthy children and not only ill children. And I try to give them, to lead them back to health. So what does this mean? I think we need to understand that really good. Because when we compare animals and humans, then we see one big difference. Animals are healthy by nature, as well plants. They reach their perfect state by nature. A dog cannot become doggier, a rose not more rosy like. These beautiful creatures in the nature around us, they are perfect. So it is not a problem for our evolution, for our creation we are in, to create perfect beings, healthy beings who do not need advice and ambulatories and hospitals and education. No, it's all done by nature. But this is not done for the humans. The humans are not healthy, growing up people by nature. Our development is vulnerable. And if we do not get good care, then we dehumanize. We have so much unhuman circumstances all around us, so much not human behavior. We all know that. But we do not realize that this is due to our human nature, which is only 1/3 perfect by nature. Another third is adaptation to the society's education work, more or less healthy, more or less good. But then we have this last third of our development, and that is the most sensitive today. That is what we subsumize under the word self-education, self-management, self-encouragement, and so on. Education for freedom cannot be done by nature. It can only support it by education, but must be fulfilled out of our own will. We can only free in ourselves and then help others to become free, to support their development for autonomy and true humanity. So that is why we are talking, because we are not perfect, healthy human beings by nature. We are in need of support to approach this ideal of a true human being as much as possible. And therefore, I would like first to address why we all use as adults happily digital devices. Even if we have technical problems as we had this morning, we just try again and whatever we did until we managed to come together. So we know how to handle. Please mute all your dear devices. Mute your devices.
You are muted, Michaela.
I was muted automatically because I was talking about technology. I don't know what happened. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
We
yes.
can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you. So what I wanted to say is we all do as adults perfectly work with digital devices, and they are more and more super easy to handle. Therefore, it is not at all a problem, even for a toddler, to work with a tablet and just to do this and produce new pictures and become adapted soon. We have already software for 3-month-old babies. In the moment in which the view is fixing, we can just present them tablets in front of their eyes and let them try, that is the way businessmen want to reach this immense market, including all the kids from all ages. But the designer, the former CEO of Microsoft, Bill Gates, he gave his daughter the first mobile phone with 14, and not all the software for the kids at all. And Steve Jobs, the Apple founder, had his child on the Waldorf School in the Silicon Valley, which is screen-free. And we need to ask ourselves why the IT elite is very careful in passing on digital devices to their own children. Why is this so? Because everyone who wants to know can know that the human body is not a machine, and it needs, for healthy growing up, a natural, not technical environment. Rudolf Steiner, even in his time, said already so warm-hearted to parents, to teachers, please don't give your children technical toys. They are perfect. They cannot grow with the child. They are not an encounter which is nourishing for the developing body. Of course, when we are grown up, then we can use technical tools all over the day and whatever, because it doesn't harm us at all. We only then need to see that there's enough time for body building and sport in between, so that our body is not harmed by too much sitting and too much technology. So we know how to create a good work-life balance for our adult bodies. But for children, it is really damaging because it influences the whole way their body is developing. And I hope to can give you just some examples so that we understand this better and have a source out of our understanding, a source for engaging us to save, so to say, as much as possible children from a too early use of digital devices. Eliand was mentioned. We did a huge campaign to bring into our EU directives for digital education action plan the topic of age-appropriate teaching and monitoring the process. And this age appropriateness is really the nerve, the central nerve of world of education, as you all know, I'm sure. So what is world of education about? What is the main goal? It is to give the chance to each child for an environment in which the child can become self-active. In one of Rudolf Steiner's lectures on education he gave to public teachers in Switzerland, he formulated this key principle in the following words. He said, every teaching, every education is self-education. A teacher, a caregiver, parents can only create the best possible environment in which the child can become self-active and through self-activity, self-educating along the needs of its destiny. Of course, we cannot give each child the possibility to become a famous musician like Mozart or Beethoven by offering a lot of music in the environment. You know, if the needs of destiny go in another direction, then this child will develop a fine sense for music and will enjoy music and maybe even play an instrument, but it will become a doctor, a farmer, or a businessman. So the needs of destiny are in each person out of pre-birth decisions. What is for this individuality the best step for its earthly journey, for its further development? So this is each person's secret, each person's mission. We cannot change that. And this is, of course, not the task of education, but to offer the best possibilities that each person can find his or her mission. That is our challenge. And in modern times, it plays such a big role how we understand the damaging influences of digital devices if they come too early and too extensively. And because in the private use at home, we have so little influence, each parent, all home situations are individual, it's privacy. We cannot just cross borders and say you must or you should not. If parents cannot handle it otherwise, then we must count with a lot of screen time in childhood at home. But when we get the children in school, then we have the chance to offer something else. Therefore, we should not use it in school. And now we have Corona pandemic times, and you all know what this matters. Homeschooling, digital learning is now pushed forward in a way which is very problematic if adults cannot find good alternatives. That, for example, we as teachers and caregivers give advice to parents, to grandparents, to those people who work homeschooling wise with the children, and give them advice how to work with the children and not go directly in the digital contact making procedure with the children, so that we make age appropriate designs for learning at home and give tasks which make the children as much as possible self-active. And this is, of course, in every degree another challenge, how to do this best. And I'm admiring how creative some teachers and parents and at home are, and how it is even for some children a very touching and interesting experience how the adults are concerned about their well-being and creative learnings at home. So I would like to give you 3 short examples to show what a digital or technical environment or a screen as main encounter tool is doing with humans when they are still in development. One I learned is in my pediatric training when I worked with in child's neurological department. And we had all the babies and children who suffered from brain damage under birth or other neurological acquired problems. What did we do? First, of course, we examine all the movement patterns which are pathological. And then we offer for treatment Voita, Bobat, and other baby gymnastic methods. But they all have the same goal. We try by very sensitive handling to block the pathological movement patterns of the baby. And through this holding and hindering pathological spastic movements, we give the intention of the child, its intentionality, a strong impulse to move in a healthy direction. So we leave unblocked the healthy movement possibilities even ill children still have, and we block the pathological movement desires. And through this, the healthy possibilities are strengthened. And what is this doing with the brain? Our brain is perceiving the healthy movement patterns, and it is not perceiving the pathological patterns. And therefore, the brain can develop new connections who are perceiving these healthy movement patterns. And through this, brain regeneration can take place. Because even if you have a brain damage, the whole brain is still growing, compensating the ill parts and letting grow the not affected parts to take over what the ill parts cannot handle anymore. So the brain itself is, as a very famous scientific bestseller says from Thomas Fuchs, which is also translated into English, the brain is a relationship organ. Through encounter, through sensomotoric activity, which should be as intelligent as we know as possible. Therefore, we talk about sensomotoric intelligence development as the main fundament of later intellectual intelligence, because intellectual intelligence needs an utmost healthy brain. But if this is not built up through sensomotoric intelligence, it cannot happen. So we try to influence through sensomotoric exercises therapeutically again and again and again and again, and every day done by the mother or the caregiver, that the brain has the chance as much as possible to reshape itself and to grow. And then the child can improve and more develop healthy movement patterns. And the same principle we use when we have elderly people who come into dementia. Dementia is, again, a process in which parts of the brain, through circulation problems, through metabolic problems, develop pathological substances, blockades, so that many nerve cells are dying. And how now to encourage new ones, because the brain can lifelong change in its fine ends of the nerves and can create new connections to compensate. For example, I'm now an aged person. You know, when you are aging, you lose neurological potential. but you also win if you keep going. You can develop compensatory brain networks. And the same works with people who suffer from dementia. And what are we doing? You know, first dementia management was to let them count, to let them memorize, to let them say their name, and what date do we have today, and what is the phone number of your friend, and all such things, you know, intellectual training. And the result was not very good. But now we are much more physiologically thinking and on our therapeutic pathways. What are we doing? We let the elderly people sing in chorus. Even people with progressed dementia can still sing or play an instrument, and we let them do this again. As much as possible, we let them dance. We let them walk. We let them paint. We let them be creative. And then they become better. So this principle we need to understand. And when I worked, this was for me the most convincing as a young doctor. When I worked in the eye hospital, ophthalmological hospital, it was during my studies, my internships in the beginning of the 70s. You know, we had not yet screens in all the patient rooms at all. But in this eye hospital, there were TV screens in all corridors, in all sitting groups. And I asked our physician who did the teaching, I asked him, is this good for the eyes to watch screens? I thought this is rather not so good for the eye. And then he said, you are right. For the eyes, it is not the best we can do to watch screens. But if we have an eye muscle operation, and the eye muscles, we have 6 of them, as you know, must heal, then they need, as every wound who wants to restore nicely, who wants to be healed, peace, not movement, but peace for healing. And the only chance to get the eye muscles in full movelessness is to sit in the distance of 5 meters before the screen. Because then the picture is moving and the eye muscles are completely stiff. We know that even in sleep, we have the rapid eye movements and rolling of the eyes. And when he said this, it made really sort of click in my mind that watching screen is an inverse act of looking, because normal looking is very active. You walk with your eyes when you observe something, and you fix and you compare. You are active looking, and the object is in peace. Screen watching is exactly the other way around. Picture is moving. Eye is absolutely not active. It's inactive. It's just letting in. It's not actively perceiving. And you can imagine that each hour in childhood, when you watch screen, you do a pathological stimulation for the development of your eyes. And then I realized healthy eye development needs, you can read this in every physiological book, it needs 8 years until the full eye organization, all the qualities of light and darkness and color and perspective, perceiving, looking, is full developed and connected with the body skills, with listening, with all the other senses. The eyes are the sense which needs longest for its full sensomotoric integration in the whole system of senses and motor skills. The ears are already completely developed with 4 years. The eyes are needing double the time. So therefore, in the first 7, 8 years, we should serve children by an utmost screen-free environment if we want to support healthy sensomotoric development. When we come to the later stages, we have the emotional development in the foreground. Between 7 and 14, we all know that feeling is developing. And feeling has then to be connected with the intelligent sensomotoric skills of the childhood, the first childhood time. So now emotions have to be connected with the world around us, with everything the child can see. And through this, empathy with the environment can develop. Empathy with people, empathy with animals, with plants, with everything. And of course, a healthy self-esteem can develop. Tolerance, overcoming desires of mobbing and teasing and bullying, you know, all the emotions have to be acknowledged, have to be trained, have to be healed, have to be transformed into empathic tools, which are not only self-related, you know, like America first, me first, you know, and all the others are pushed down. No, we must become in an emotional balance, and this emotional balance between self-care and environmental needs, we name social competency. And when you look in studies, and we have meanwhile a lot of them, what is the most harmful of too much screen time between 7 and 14, that is that these children develop an immature emotional life, that they develop the disposition for aggression and depression and experience of inner emptiness and grayness. Therefore, they need permanently to be stimulated, and that makes them addicted. One found out that when we use screens and watch whatever, even if we only write emails, our praising system in the brain is stimulating because we permanently have a little success. Every like, every response, we Google something, it immediately the result is popping up. We feel good about this. Some people even forget when they are on screen to eat. They are so attracted by all this response. We all know these negative side effects, but when we have to care for children, it is important that we really know the consequences and that it matters, that it is not nothing. Even between 7 and 14, each hour counts in which you allow a young person to develop a real encounter, quality in its emotional development. because you cannot develop healthy emotions with permanent changing screen pictures who are not based on reality. Your body is a reality. It needs real encounter to develop real feelings, which are then part of your later adult healthy feeling system. So we develop between 7 and 14 the emotional intelligence, social competence, sense for self-care and environmental care. And then only between 14 and 21, we develop this intellectual intelligence. The frontal brain, which gives us the possibility for self-control, for self-thinking. This frontal brain is maturing between 14 and 16 years, not before. Therefore, when you are in full puberty, you are not yet a self-thinker. You are not yet self-controlled. We all know this. Puberty is not the time of showing your self-control capacity. This comes later. This is a post-puberty phenomena. Self-control helps us to overcome the classical puberty symptomatology and behavior. Of course, you know this all, I'm sure. But when we focus to such a serious theme as how to give the chance for healthy growing up in times, in screen times, in digital times, in digitalization times, in the world of digital media and so on, then we need to consider what we know really carefully and take consequences out of what we know. Because our responsibility is huge. And I grew up, in the time in which, when I was grade 5, the first TVs came into the families. I'm the first screen generation, so to say. You live in the time in which you educate the fourth and even fifth screen generation. So mostly parents and grandparents are already screen damaged. And we need now to learn through insight, even if we are ourselves a bit screen damaged, to change that this development is not going on and contributes to dehumanization of humanity, of the next generations. So in Waldorf schools, if we work with the curriculum, then we have two guidelines. One is, of course, adults need to understand computers well, because they need to teach throughout the grades how to understand media and how important it is first to develop self-competence before we delegate this to the machines. Why do we house building in grade 3? Why to do that? Because today children are only watching machines building houses. But at least once in life, I did it by my own. I know how this is. I have another view. I have another gratitude when I see what all the machines are doing for us, so that humans have easier work. So the more we help the children first to develop all the skills the computer is able to take now from our own shoulders, the higher the degree of respect, of gratitude, but also the more competent and mature use we will have. Then we will use digital devices when it's really needed, but not at all to waste our time with it. We will use our time for creative humanization or human worthy work, and not just to let us, how can I say, if you watch one Netflix sequence after the other, for example, of course, that is exciting. But at the end of the day, you lost one day. What do you do with all these informations? What could you have done by reflecting your mission, your life's path? The question, what is really essential in life? This day did not make you self-active. You lost it for your self-education. Of course, we can do this in between, and as adults, it will not harm. But when I see so many addicted children, youngsters, they will never be able to develop their self-thinking and self-acting capacity if they will not get treatment later on. But what is built up as organ functions, you cannot change. You can only transform a little bit. So you have harmed whole generations. In Switzerland, it's meanwhile each fifth child computer addicted between 12 and 17 years. This is alarming. I don't know the exact numbers in the Philippines, but it's a worldwide problem. And therefore, the two principles, one is to make us as adults self-competent in understanding that children, for example, in 7th, 8th grade learn how to write computer languages, how to do 10-finger typing, all these skills and mental understandings, that's important. But then after the frontal brain maturity, to use certain learned softwares and integrate some tools in teaching where it is really helpful and necessary and enriching, that is wonderful. So these are the two principles, self-competency and really working with the computers as adults, and invest time in good understanding also how apps are working, and also about the side effects of electrosmog and so on. There is so much to learn about the whole world of this information technology and all what has to come, what will come, so that we have a clear picture. What do I want to integrate in my life and what not? And on the other hand, to accompany the children as age appropriate as possible and give them a chance for healthy body and soul and spiritual mental development, so that they can become self-guided, self-directed, media, mature and competent people. And now, Kate, I have a question. How much time do I have to round up my contribution? Because I would love to give a little picture also about education for the future insights.
Yeah. TOEFL? Do you have we still
Yes,
have
we still have 30 minutes for Dr. Glockler's talk.
13
30,
or
30.
30?
yeah,
30.
30.
30.
I think you can
Okay.
still
So
contribute.
I'm glad then, and you, of course, you can have, I hope you will make it. It's not too long. So maybe I can show you two books most of you will know. One is I wrote only a foreword in this book because the book was written by non-anthroposophists, brain researchers, and very concerned academics on children's and youth health. And they wrote the book Growing Up Healthy in a World of Digital Media. And it was translation by highly motivated people in Britain. And they exchanged some of the German references into easy, accessible for you English references. And that is the ISBN number. I hope you can see that, but it's also easy to find in the internet. Why do I praise this book? Because you can find here the mainstream research supporting everything what I said out of World of Principles and my medical experience. And it is written for the third and fourth screen generation. It is not big. It is full of pictures and diagrams and colors. So it's really nice to read. There is no word anthroposophy. You can give it into every person's hand. And therefore, I'm so grateful that on behalf of Iliand, we could make it to bring it in 11 languages already, inclusive Arabian language. And it's now going on to be translated in Japan. So I hope this book will help to wake up parents for their responsibility. And it's age appropriate build up. So what is the biggest damage between 0 and 3, between 3 and 6, 6 and 9, 9 and 12, 12 and 16. So it's very, very nicely made, and I'm happy to recommend it to you. And the other is written by me, and it has in English the title Education for the Future. And this was also published by these friends in Britain. And you see this nice spiral on the cover. In the middle, you see a baby, and at the end, you see a person 21 years doing social year in Africa. So a young, healthy adult. And what I tried in this book is to describe, based on the one hand on mainstream research, but my main goal was also based on a very differentiated picture of the development of the human being based on Rudolf Steiner's study of man. Because we have mostly such a rough picture. We know the physical body is born with birth, and then with 7, the etheric forces are born, our life organization, and is ready for thinking. And then with 14 around, our astral body with the emotional life is born. And around 21, our I organization, bringing free will. You know, this very rough picture gives, of course, a basic orientation. But this liberation of growing forces into thinking forces, of feeling forces, of the astral differentiating forces into feeling forces, and the integrative working forces of the I organization, what the I organization is doing in the body, when these forces are liberating and becoming our will concentration, our integration faculty on the mental level, our free will with which we can focus and make decisions and so on. This process is a continuous process. In the first 7 years, the liberation of the etheric is predominant. But of course, the child learns already how to work with feelings and will. But this is totally subordinated to the liberation of the etheric, which is in the foreground. But also the liberation of the etheric in thinking capacity goes not only year by year, it goes month by month, day by day. It is a continuous process between birth and seven. And the same with the liberation of the astral forces, which have this differentiation and music character, which we then find on the soul level in our differentiated feeling life. It is a continuous process. And the same with the integration forces, the will forces of our eye organization. And therefore we have in world of education the only system so far worldwide in which we have an age-appropriate curriculum which wants to support this liberation process best possible. And when we are a sensitive class teacher, then we even bring the blocks in their sequence during the school years in such an order that it is nourishing this liberation process in this class best possible. We even change our block plan when we see other competencies are already liberating and ready to be nourished by the curriculum, by the teaching work. And I would like to give you some key motives for each year, and I will try to get it done almost in the time which is left. And please stop me if I am not self-controlled enough in watching my watch, because it can be that the exciting theme is bringing me a bit out of time. So I'm happy to stop immediately when my time is over and I cannot make the point by my own best possible. So what is the age-appropriate learning disposition, this readiness for self-education in the first year of life? It is two things. The eyes are extremely attentive. The first year of life is the year in which we stimulate our brain to become attentive. And the body skills want to learn the muscles only one thing: to become upright, to stand on one's own feet. Therefore, we need to create an environment which is peaceful enough to pay attention, which gives good pictures of upright human beings, and which allows the child to move and explore freely around and train all the muscles which are then needed to bring this body upward in the upright position. And now imagine how we treat children in the first year. Even if we run them with this children's car, mostly face in front of the public. This is an ADHD promoting action. We produce artificially attention deficiency disposition all over, because we bring these kids in a total chaotic realm, environment of noises, of impressions. And when the child can see the mother who is driving this little children's car, then the child sees only one object, mother's or the caregiver's face, and can concentrate, can develop attentiveness. I cannot give now a lot of examples. I could talk a whole hour about the first year, because it is so important to understand what is the need for the child to learn in this year, and from what it needs to be protected, so that it can focus to the age-appropriate learning goal. And in the second year, a total other learning goal is there. Now the ears are coming forward. Listening is now the main goal of the child, listening to language. Language learning comes in front. But you see, to become upright and attentive gives the child the orientation, the fundament for the orientation in space. Learning to listen to the language as a process gives the child the first deep taken in and perceived orientation in time. Speech is a time process. Uprightness is a space event. And then in the third year, this wonder happens that children find for the first time their orientation out of space and time, purely mentally in thinking. And they start to say, I am, to themselves. And they draw the circles, as we all know, when they are already at that stage, some earlier, some later, of course. It's an average, what I say. And then in the fourth year, the goal is again so different, because now the child is bringing together, it wants to bring together all the first 3 years' experiences. And that is so nice. Most of you know the two most beloved words of children in the fourth year of life. That is between 3 and 4, the fourth year. It's the word why and the word again. When they enjoy something, they want to repeat. The main goal is to learn to repeat. When you want to have later in school children who are eager to repeat until they are able to do something, then they need to have a good fourth year of life in which this longing for repetition, by singing the same songs, by hearing the same stories, by listening to the same nice plays and verses. Yeah, we have in German such a nice verse when we let the children sit on our knees, and then we play to be on a horse and say a nice verse. And at the end of this verse, the child falls from the horse between the knees. And that is very, very nice experience. And then the children say again, and then you do it 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 the last time, and then the very last time, and then the very, very, very last time. You know, and of course, at some point you have nicely to round up, but then you need really to change your body position and put the child on its own feet and say, and now we have done. Now something else is coming. You know, and the same when children are asking why, then you explain. Then another why comes, and then you explain. And then it's good at a certain stage to round up this dialogue in a picture. And then you remain with this picture and say, yes, this is so. This is so. Just an example. You know, it is an art to educate children in the fourth year and to give them enough repetition possibility and to enjoy their enjoyment And not to say I did it already twice, now it's finished, I have something more important, you know. This is discouraging. This is really intellectual. This is not part of life, part of reality, an empathic, interactive process. And this year goes over as fast as the others. In the 5th year, another competency which wants to be learned comes forward, and that is fantasy. What is fantasy? You know, you have a stick and you can clean the room with this stick. You can make an umbrella with this stick. It replaces an umbrella in the rain. It can be a king's scepter, a bishop's tool. You know, what is fantasy? My thinking gives the object its meaning. My thinking is stronger than the world of the objects. When you want to become, or the child later wants to become, a big inventor who is able to invent things no person has ever seen before. You know, the whole computer world was designed by people who grew up without computers, but they had the fantasy to create such machines. Kepler, who brought the sun-centered worldview, he had the fantasy to go in mind on planet Mars and to watch from there what Sun and Earth are doing. And then he realized the Earth is running around the Sun and not the other way around, although the senses show the opposite. Each child sees how the Sun is walking and not the Earth. So without fantasy, you cannot really understand the visible world and all the laws within, and how to use the laws of nature to create machines and products and artistic works who serve human development, and how to avoid dangers. And if we do not nourish this fantasy time, the children don't have fantasy. And we have so many people without fantasy. They only feel good if everything goes as it was always, and if they have enough fun. No creative fantasy to find something really new, or even to find one's own development as something we have to develop fantasy in what direction we want to lead it. Also, the process of self-education needs fantasy. If not, we remain. Well, in the 6th year, a total new activity comes forward, and that is how to bring now the strong fantasy encouraged thinking world together with the world of the objects. Now children stop fantasy play and they love to play as much as possible things, ceremonies, like in reality. I even remember in my childhood when we had our children's magazines that there came one day I did not want to pay with beans and little objects or fruit, seeds. We had seeds of different sizes, and this was our money. Then we started to take real money, put it under a paper, and then did cut around to create with paper reality-like looking pens and money pieces to pay. Yeah, we enjoyed to come from fantasy back to reality again. And a nephew of mine who had this age last year, he gave me at Christmas a beautiful painting he made with a drawing of an aeroplane he experienced with his father, who had to take often an airplane, and sometimes he takes the boy with him so that the mother has a day off. Yeah, and all the details he explained to me. And then I asked him one detail which was not yet on his picture, and then he said, "Oh, I will accomplish." So that is so typical for that age. But it would not be helpful to do such dialogues when you see pictures from the 4th or 5th year. Then it's nice to let the children share what they did paint, to let them talk, to make them productive, but not to give advice what could be missing. And in the 7th year, we have what Rudolf Steiner describes so often together with the second dentition, this freeing capacity of those forces which are memory forces, abstract memory forces. So what that children can memorize something they have heard only once in school and they know it still at home. That is the most powerful school readiness test for us as school doctors, to test this abstract memory faculty. Because then in the 8th year, the liberation of emotional life takes already place. And this is connecting then feelings with thinking, with memory. Therefore, in the 8th year, children love to learn by heart. Therefore, we do so much learning by heart, poetry and singings in the 1st and 2nd grade. Children love to do that. In the 1st grade, we let them memorize what they have seen. The curriculum advices by Steiner are full of this, to repeat what one has discovered yesterday or on the way to school, so that memory for all the sense experiences can be trained, that one can sense and feel what the enjoyment, I have seen this and I can keep this in my mind. I can share it with my peers and with the teacher. And 8th year, more the speech, poetry, or a little legend, a prosa piece to learn by heart. And we do then also perform this. That is so healthy for the emotional development, because we need to bring the emotional life up to the thinking observation level, that we can feel what we think, that we can feel what we see, that we develop empathy. You know, cold intellectual thinking, then can people play criminal acts, they can play corruptive games, you know, they do not feel that they harm with this way of thinking others. It is a lack of education. I am so empathic with these criminals because I know they had not a good education. They had intellectual learning or deprivation situations at home. And then, of course, we would need total other prison culture to give these people the possibility to regain their humanity and not to become worse afterwards, even. So this is really prevention for personality deviations we really don't like. It is the time in which social competency and empathy must develop. And then in the 9th year, we have this remarkable moment when feeling comes together with the most central thought, I am I. And then the feeling of loneliness is born, which is so harmful and marks this Rubicon time. Because from this moment on, you know, all the other people on this globe are different from me. And my mother will die one day. And maybe one day I will be alone on this earth. And this can be so harmful when it is not accompanied well by the environment, that children start already in this age to become computer or alcohol addicted or peer addicted. They go into a group, they cannot tolerate this feeling alone experience. And in world of education, we try to strengthen the I. Yes, you are alone, but you can find friends. We are all together, but as individuals. And that is such another experience. And therefore the 10th year is so remarkable, because if this is overcome well, then for the first time, real empathy comes up. And in the 10th year, it is the year in which almost every child wants to have an animal to care for, because it wants spontaneously to train its empathic feelings with the other beings in the environment. And then sometimes the horse or the cow or the cat is the best friend of the child, if it has not yet found a best friend. Because children want to love someone, they want to develop this sense for empathy. And then in the 11th year, feelings are becoming more and more relevant for the language we are using, for the way we are communicating. And I'm sure you discover this with your children today as well as it is in Europe. In this age, most children one day experience and discover that there are words who have different meanings. For example, in German, we have a word for a white horse, which is very beautiful. And the same word we use if we have damaged bread or cheese or jam. These little creatures have the same name, Schimmel. And to discover this, that the most ugly thing that we then have to throw the bread away is the same sound and word we use for the most beautiful white horse. That enjoys the children, and they are looking, are there other words like this? And this, when you go in the curriculum, so differentiated advice how to work with grammar and speech, particularly in this age. Because children have this feeling for language most in this age, and that there is a difference between thinking and speaking. That thinking is the archetypical language for whole humanity. And when we translate, we bring words back to thoughts and thoughts back to the other wording. And that is the reason why Steiner wanted only from that age on that we come to vocabulary learning with children and not before. Because we do not translate word by word. We translate thoughts. We are interpretators when we translate. So it's all so deeply connected with an understanding of human development. What we have in the Waldorf curriculum, it is such a source of future knowledge. And then in the 12th year, we have this age-appropriate learning disposition for feeling not only my connections with, but also develop a strong feeling for the whole environmental system we are in. Therefore, children in this age behave, if it goes well, like small adults. They know everything in kitchen, how to replace the mother if necessary, what father is doing, all the handcrafts the child has seen. There are wonderful babysitters. You can trust them. And in my pediatric consultation, I've often heard parents say, I do not fear puberty. My child is so perfect. And then it can be already weeks later that you have the next stage of development, that this beautiful, harmonious finalization of childhood is disrupted into pieces. And then we have, why do I have to do this? You have nothing to say to me. I will run away. You have total other emotional expressions, because now children for the first time feel their own will capacity, but because the free will is not yet really free, is still fully connected with the unconscious drives of the body, the child feels the will capacity but cannot yet handle the will capacity. And therefore, this is puberty crisis, top of puberty crisis. In the 14th year already, the beginning of self-control comes. And then in 15th, 16th years, they are loving to train their own will capacity. And so it goes on. I have to round up, but those who have interest to read this in detail, I can really recommend this book, although it is written by me. That's the only reason I would love not to quote it.
Michaela, we are arranging it that they can order it through Tammy. And we're sending out the picture and the ISBN number of the book.
Yes, and if people have no possibility to buy it and would really love to read it, then I would try to ask my friends in Iliand if we cannot give you a little support, or when you support Iliand, then I could give back this money so that you can buy books to support poorer family situations. Because for me, it's just my work, or I ask myself permanently, what can I do to help more children growing up healthy in our modern time and to meet a fruitful future? And I feel so together with you as teachers and doctors and parents to have this same goal. And therefore, I'm really grateful that you gave me the chance to speak to you in my snowy morning and into your sunny, warm afternoon.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Gockler. We were supposed to have a 15-minute conversation, open conversation. Would you still have time for it? Since it's already almost 6 p.m. Well, almost the end of our schedule. But would it be okay for you and also for everyone to stay a few more minutes for our open space conversation?
Yes, I am in this position as long you can still tolerate it.
Okay.
So I think 15, 20 minutes I could enlarge if this is also okay for you, but I know this always sitting in front of the screen and having other things to do. Of course, we need to be honest with one another.
Yes.
And if there is a need, maybe do another 1 hour in which we only have conversation. We could also plan this and round it up now. So it's really up to you.
Well, that would be beautiful. Are people still willing to stay for 15 more minutes? So,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, yes.
So
Okay.
there we go. So we're open for whatever questions and insights that you may have. What we can do is you can just unmute yourself and then say your name, identify yourself, and then wait to be acknowledged before you ask your question or share your insight. Yeah, that's it. So anyone who wants to start. And you can also, for the other, you can also leave your questions in the chat box. And if there's no one who's asking, we can also read the questions in the chat box.
Hello, this is Tessa Landoni. Can I ask?
Yes, Tessa, please.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed you are recording the talk. Is it
Yes,
yeah, to get this recording? Is it possible to get the recording?
yes, we will be sending it to the people who attended here and to those who registered but did not we were not able to accommodate because we can only accommodate 100 participants. So we'll be sending
Okay.
out the recording.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Tessa.
Tam,
Yes,
Jofel. Yes,
go ahead.
Jofel here. There have been a lot of questions from the registration forms about digital learning, and it maybe it would be interesting for everyone to also know what Dr. Michaela think about this distance learning or these online classes, and um, uh, a lot of concerns have been raised on how rhythm can be upheld, how healthy setup in the family can also be upheld given the distance learning. And of course, in the country, it's still very uncertain if we can hold physical classes next school year. So I guess my just to express the question most of the teachers have, what does Dr. Michaela think about this current learning environment as of the moment in this time of pandemic?
Thanks, Jofel.
Yeah, I tried already to mention the most essential point, because it is all about in what age are the children with whom I shall now do long distance learning. And according to the age and what wants to be nourished and developed in this age, I adapt the way I do the long distance learning. And therefore, the main thing is to know the adults, to make a network, an electronic network among the parents or the grandparents or the neighbors, or what I recommend, that according to the local rules, if 2 families can visit one another, or even 3 or 5, that one can take also children together in little learning groups so that they have interactive partners. And then those adults who are responsible for the homeschooling process, that the teacher is electronically connected with this network of the responsible people who are doing the homeschooling, and to school the adults what they shall bring and teach the children, so that the teacher is not teaching the children online, but that the teacher is teaching the parents online the evening before or in the earlier morning or however, or over lunch. The adults are free to do this. And that then the adults on the 1-to-1 or 1-to-5 basis, according to the local situation, really become in this time the teachers for their children. Or that there is one screen time in which the teacher is addressing all the children, that they can see him and that he is explaining and that he is saying, and this will now be done by your parents or whatever adults at home. So we need to find a way in which we can go on with our world of education in these special times and find always the best possible compromise. But this need to be worked out under the local circumstances and in clear correspondence to the age in which the children are. The pedagogical section has, I think, quite a number of recommendations on their website, also the German Bund der Waldorfschulen. But for me, the main thing is that we as adults understand why it is important to give stimulation for self-activity in the real world and not to make screens to become the teachers in a time in which the neurosensorial and neuropsychomotorical development is not yet complete or is still in process. The better we understand this, the more fantasy we develop how we can find the best compromise.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glockler. Jovel, do you have
Yes,
any?
no, not anymore, Tam. Thank you so much, Dr. Glockler.
So others?
Tammy,
Yes, Dr. Alonso.
is it possible for Dr. Glockler to maybe have a webinar like this for parents? Because it's different. If parents will hear her say all these things, I think it will be more effective and parents will have the insight.
I would
Because
suggest the
not
following, that you first give some parents the lecture we had now, which I gave for you, because you have recorded it. You can make it accessible for them, and then you can see if this is understandable for parents as well, or if not so good, or if parents have other questions, then please give me the questions, and then I'm happy to do on the basis of this parent feedback and based on parent needs, which I know then, to do another lecture. I'm really glad to do that if this would be helpful.
Wow, that's wonderful, Dr. Michaela. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Tammy, I have a comment or question for Dr. Glockler and Sujata.
Okay, so
And is that all right? Can I ask my question?
go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Glockler, for your generosity of spirit and of sharing. And I think it's something that I presume to think that for the Waldorf community here, to something that we've been thirsting for this kind of community to come together. I am with Saint Michael Playhouse, and one of the casualties also of this pandemic is really been the services that are provided for young children in daycare and kindergarten settings. And even our playhouse has had to limit its operations. We tried very hard to do what you had suggested. We came up with a program that would address the parents and give them also a coaching program, so that we would talk to them on a weekly basis, as well as provide them curriculum and materials. But given the economic situation of the country regarding that, we have had to stop that, at least for the time being. And I know it's different in Europe, because they're being allowed, young children are being allowed to come together. Here in the Philippines, there's still a lot of fear about children coming together, because there's always the question of where they have come from, what their parents have been exposed to, and regardless of what information is out there about the dangers of COVID, or that it's not a dangerous illness, there's still that's very prevalent here in the Philippine community, in the Philippine society. So and I know that the schools here are also doing their best to limit the exposure of their olds and 14-year-olds up, limit their time and exposure to media. But the craving of the children also for physical interaction is something that will not be allowed also by the Philippine government, as you had suggested, those small pods of eating together, unless the parents do it without the knowledge of the authorities. And that's a reality that we're facing here. We have no idea when these directives will be lifted. So your talk has been very helpful in addressing what needs to be developed in each age group. The lack there still is the inability for children to come together, to feel each other, to touch each other, and even for the teacher to have that interaction with their children, which is so primal and so necessary. So I don't know if there's a question here, but it's an observation and a statement of where we are and why there's so much uncertainty. I mean, on the continuum, it's anxiety, and then on the other hand, it's uncertainty about what our future is here within the next couple of months.
Yes. No, much more dangerous than the COVID virus is the fear. We have a fear pandemic which causes incredibly high suicide rate, poverty, new poverty, and damages. You know, the next years will show the full picture of what happened. And therefore, of course, the health rules we have all to take, the hygienic rules, we just have to take it. Yeah, this is now the COVID regime. But what I recommend is to use every possibility which is in the framework of what is allowed to meet, and to create an atmosphere of non-fear, of life's courage radiating from each adult. I went this morning in the internet looking up the latest infection rate of the Philippines. I just, of course you know it, but I will bring it into our common consideration. You have in the Philippines 109,581,085 people. This is what is said. Infected of this 109 million are 516,000 and 166. That means from your population so far, you have an infection rate of 0.47% of the population. And now your death rate of those who are infected is 2.01%. We know, and this is worldwide in the statistics, that when you have, as you have now in the Philippines, you have these 166 infected people. Let me say 5,200 people are infected. And from these 500,200 people, it's a huge amount. They are positive tested with COVID. So right now, 500,200 positively tested people, and 20% of these positive tested people are completely healthy. This is every fifth positive tested. And from the 80%, the utmost greatest majority has only mild symptoms, like a cold. And a small number has severe COVID symptoms because it is a dangerous disease and really worth to be that we pay attention to it. But only 2.01% are coming to death from this disease. And this percentage is taken from the 516,200 people. What do I want to say with this? The chance to remain healthy is 98%. Only 2.01% of those who have the infection come to death. And we know that those are coming to death who are either of old age or have already chronic diseases or live in ugliest poverty, in difficult, undernourished life circumstances, and have a weak immune system. So you can really feel or ask yourself, am I not every day in the risk of 2% that something can happen? What higher is the COVID risk than the normal risk of life for 98%? This is the utmost greatest majority. And if that something happens, the 2%, is this not also part of destiny? Where is my destiny trust? That if my life shall be endangered or end, this is in God's hands. And this is not only due to COVID, this is due to an accident, this is due to whatever. The normal risk of life, we all know. And there is no increase for the individual normal risk of life. And those who have an increased risk because they are old-aged, they are already ill, they can be really good protected. And they should be much better protected than we protect them right now in many parts of the world. We have to focus our empathy on them, but not put energy into self-fear. And if this makes sense to you, then you are happy and courageous to meet and to hug whatever you want if both sides like this. I'm extremely respectful. If someone is fearful, then I keep all the distances. But when I meet a friend and it's quickly clear that we live with a normal risk of life, and then we hug one another, and then we sit together, and we have no fear, we have no problem. I hope you understand what I mean. Full respect to those who are fearful and who need the protection, but also to give a big chance to the 98% of healthy people. And therefore, in good reports in our newspapers, we read now more and more suggestions for the authorities to transform the risk management towards, no, sorry, to transform the crisis COVID management into a well-guided and controlled risk management of the real risks and not of the theoretical, possible, exceptional risks, which what we have now, to protect everyone, even the 98% who don't need it. So this is a management question, and as long our authorities are still promoting the crisis management and not looking primarily to the risk management, we can at least, in the framework in which we are free, use our healthy mindset to reflect the real risks of life for us and our friends and our neighbors, and come into a sensitive conversation. You know, it makes no sense to say to someone who is fearful, this is, you don't have to have fear. I would never ever say so. But I would ask, I would start at least a conversation so that the other can share his fears. And maybe together we find a way to reduce a little bit the fears. I see really a huge task of us as doctors and, yeah, life realistic and life trusting people to help our pandemic ill friends as much as possible and to protect those groups who really need protection, because for them the infection can become dangerous.
Thank you so very much for those words, Dr. Glockler. I guess the question for us in the Waldorf community, the question that I think we should be asking ourselves is how we can, as a community, knowing all the greater risk of digital technology and the social isolation of the children, how can we make our voices heard by the government? How can we be more active in working towards the end of policies that are not really helping our children or even manage the pandemic, the so-called pandemic. Yeah, so it's really, I think, something that we must do as a community, something to think about, something to gather and get together and talk about, and really be a force. Because if one person will just do it, Jim tried to do it. Jim gathered doctors to write a petition. Um, uh, it did not really gain force. So, but do we just give up with that? Can we, as a community, try again So I guess those
Yeah,
are
you know,
is-
Tammy, you know, you can start locally. For example, I don't know how it is in the Philippines, but in Germany, it is allowed for football teams to go on with the training. They are all tested, and then there are, so to say, a virus cluster, and they can play as long they remain all healthy. And if one person is positively tested, they all have to keep 7 to 10 days. Quarantine is now reduced to 7 days because in this time a virus has the chance to come up with symptoms. Then they can go on with their training. Why not to offer the authorities to say our class and our parenthood and the associated teacher, they also want to be such a cluster. We are all going to the test. If we are negative or all positive and it remained without symptoms, then we can do normal teaching. We keep the mask and everything until the house in which the little group is, or even if it can be done in school, in our classroom. And then we do regular teaching and stimulate the immune system of the children because they are happy, because they can learn, because they can meet. You know, psychologists know the damage. We need to look that best professionals, psychologists, children's doctors are supporting that locally. And then what is allowed for football teams can become allowed for class teams. But of course, the precondition is that all those who are involved have no fear and really want to do it like football teams want to do it. You know, we need to get this football mood and this healthy mindset that there is no risk, a very, very small risk. And if it happens, then we go in quarantine and wait and see and have a big chance to be part of the 98% of people who remain healthy or who overcome their symptoms easily. So I really would start locally. And if we have some good local examples, then to let reporters bring this in the local media. But it is a process because there is such a fear and such an, also a desire to over control that we need to be careful. And I would suggest do it locally and modest and out of love for the children, and try to broaden possibilities you get to know about and you can imagine, to broaden these possibilities of normality, to bring normality back.
yeah, that's a wonderful idea. Yeah. So are there other questions? It's already 6:20 p.m. in the Philippines. So are there other questions, insights that you want to share before we end, or burning questions?
Close again with the nice verse. I
Yes.
would be very glad about that.
So Kate, okay, Jovel. Okay, so thank you so very much for this time with us. The what you shared to us is very precious, and so much to think about, for and but at the same time so inspiring. Um,
Then I close with the verse and
yes.
with a very, very warm farewell and my best wishes for all of you. Once in olden times, there lived in the souls of the initiates powerfully the thought, that by nature every person is ill, and education was seen as the healing process which brought to the child as it matured health for life's fulfilled humanity. Bye bye, dear friends.
Thank you.